Well, I want to thank everyone for coming out today. Yesterday represented a dark cloud that descended upon Columbus and spread across our great state in the form of a complaint filed by the U.S. Attorney General's Office against Speaker of the House, Larry Householder. The 81-page indictment revealed a culture of corruption, a pay-to-play scheme that included bribery, rigging of elections, dark money, illegal campaign donations, and other heinous crimes, all for the benefit of one company, its shareholders, lobbyists, and special interest groups, and a party bent on creating unlimited slush fund to build a power base to maintain that power and to continue moving forward, all at the expense of everyday folks struggling here in Ohio to live the American dream. If these allegations prove true, they represent one of the largest pay-to-play bribery conspiracies in Ohio history, with over $60 million given to a 501c4 to illegally influence and buy votes to secure the passing of House Bill 6 and to continue the power play of one power group. This type of illegal activity is one of the greatest threats to our state. It erodes public confidence in our system of government. It casts a shadow on thousands of hardworking elected officials and public officials who go to work every day trying to do what's right to make the lives better for every Ohioan. Thus, with the Attorney General's 81-page complaint and the uncovering of this pay-to-play scheme to defraud Ohioans, it is clear that House Bill 6 must be immediately repealed. Without the immediate repeal of House Bill 6, public confidence cannot be restored, and those engaged in these enterprises will continue these illegal activities. Thus, tomorrow, I am introducing a bill which would immediately repeal House Bill 6. I believe in the House, the two representatives will tell you what's going on in the House. And finally, I think the bigger picture which we need to focus on is that the complaint against Householder is really an indictment against campaign financing in Ohio. The passing of House Bill 6 represents a culture of pay to play, and it is not until we have real finance reform that we get away from these types of systems that dark money will no longer be able to influence elections. Right now, dark money and these types of activities are legal, and they have no oversight. I can tell you that when House Bill 6 came to the Senate, I'm proud I voted against it. But I was warned that if I did not support it, in all likelihood, lobbyists and special interest groups would spend a great deal of money supporting my opponent. It appears those threats were real, and I was told that much money will be sent her way in the next coming 3 to 4 months. Currently, she has $2,000 in her account. It's my understanding they're going to spend over $500,000 to try and take me out in the next election. This kind of money can only come from dark sources or illegal groups or parties that have elicited these illegal funds. I think Ohioans deserve better. I think we need to do away with these types of activities. We need to do better, and Ohioans are asking us to do better. We will repeal, hopefully, House Bill 6, and we will work on campaign financing. With that, that's my opening statement. I'm going to turn it over to Representative Mike O'Brien.
Thank you, Senator. You know, last year I was selected as chairman, one of two co-chairmen of the Energy Generation Committee. And that committee was tasked with HB 6. As chairman of that committee, I led the opposition to HB 6. We had 5 days of testimony. We had literally 250 witnesses. Of those witnesses, 2/3 were in opposition to HB 6. 2/3 of those witnesses were in opposition to HB 6. I categorize HB 6 as nothing more than a bailout to two failing nuclear power plants that were bankrupt. And I went into detail in my questions with First Energy on the over-reliance of the consumers in the state of Ohio. That bill passed by a narrow margin. However, and it went to the Senate and it again passed by a narrow margin, and it was signed by the governor. But then again was the ballot initiative to put it on the ballot in opposition of HB 6. And again, that's where these funds that are now alleged in the complaint were used extraordinarily in opposition to that ballot initiative. Again, now, first of all, they not only was that money used to gain support for HB 6, but then that money was used to fight a ballot initiative against HB 6. And again, we were opposed to it then, and now I'm a joint sponsor in the House to repeal HB 6 and essentially make it that HB 6 never existed. The bailout of the 2 nuclear plants never existed. And the consumers that are paying, we're going to be paying 85 cents a month for the next 7 years, that never existed. And the corporations paying thousands of dollars a month for the next 7 years never existed. So with this repeal, and I'm just been made aware early this morning that this repeal in the House is going to be a bipartisan repeal. And so we will have extraordinary members of the Republican Party joining the Democrats. And by the way, the co-sponsors on the Democrat side are unanimous on this repealing HB 6. So I am very happy to be the lead sponsor in this and consistent with my vocal opposition with the beginning and the creation of HB 6. Now I'll turn everything over to Representative Gil Blair.
Good morning. I was relatively new to the House when House Bill 6 came up. I actually voted on the second vote. I was a no vote. But I think it's important to understand the impact that House Bill 6 actually had on the Mahoning Valley. When this vote came up and this bill came up, it was vehemently opposed by the natural gas power industry, which we have a power plant in Lordstown already operating and others we hope slated for construction. And when House Bill 6 passed, that wasn't the end of it. Shortly after House Bill 6, Joint Resolution 2 was offered, which was an attempted ballot initiative to disrupt funding and financing by any foreign banks for power companies. And that's how many power generation plants in the United States are funded. And that resolution was introduced, which actually disrupted financing efforts for power plants here across Ohio. There was a number that were slated for construction. Representative O'Brien and I are both on the Energy and Natural Resource Committee. We both vehemently opposed that resolution in committee, but that opposition, of course, led immediately, as Senator O'Brien referenced, our opponents quickly became endorsed by Speaker Householder, and even up to this week, they've been touting that they are Householder candidates. So, you know, this bill, although it seems far away and in Columbus, it had an impact on the Mahoning Valley, and it served to at least delay the start of construction on the second gas power plant in Lordstown. And I will support the repeal of House Bill 6. I think it's absolutely necessary for the state to have credibility.
Hey, Senator, I want to thank you and state representatives for your leadership on this. And you know, all we want is transparency in government, and I think that 85 cents and First Energy ought to be thinking about giving back some money to the residents for some credits on their bills. I want to thank you guys for calling us, and any support that we could give you at the county, we're certainly.
And we do, I think, speaking for all of us here, want to thank the commissioners, Trumbull County Commissioners, and you, Dan Plifka, for your support in helping us. With that, we can open up to some questions that you may have.
Sean or Mike or Gil, the fact that Republicans are now stepping up, introducing their own companion or parallel legislation, your numbers stacked up against the Republicans, it would have made this effort seemingly much harder to overcome. The fact that Republicans are now stepping up, does that give you some comfort that this will be repealed and it won't be the fight that it might have otherwise been?
I think, at least in the Senate, I think they understand that what has happened, and looking at the complaint, going through, connecting the dots, that this is just a bad way to form and to run government, that we're going to have to go back. The only way to restore some type of confidence is to repeal this bill and look at it again. Are there some good things in there? We'll find out in committee. We'll go through the committee process again. But to keep this bill where it's at and the way it was achieved and went through is just wrong, and I think the Republicans recognize that. In the Senate, I have a joint sponsor, Stephanie Kunze, who will be joining me. And then, as Mike said, in the House, they have bipartisan support there. So I think the Republicans recognize it, as well as it's really not a Democrat-Republican issue. It's a right and wrong issue. And when it's that way, it makes it easier. Mike?
Yeah, Jerry, the bill in the House barely passed. It barely passed in the House, and that was with all this Republican support. There were, I believe, 16 or 17 Republicans that voted no, and it passed by 2 votes. So with this unanimous support of the Democrat Party, and by virtue of the fact that we're going to have a bipartisan bill, of course, the repeal will pass in the House, and I'm certain that repeal will pass in the Senate. And there is the dilemma that the governor, who once signed a bill, is going to be tasked with that.
You bring up that point. Will the governor see the handwriting that you're talking about, Sean and Mike, that he too will go along with this?
Well, the governor was one of the first to see the handwriting on asking for the Speaker of the House to step down. He was the first public official to ask for him to step down. So this whole process, I think that I believe that the reality is, if something overwhelmingly supports the House, overwhelmingly supports the Senate, he's got a obligation. Of the state of Ohio to bail you out, because it's not going to happen.
Any indication before yesterday that this was coming down? Have you heard any hints about this investigation or what was disclosed yesterday?
There's always been talk about how the money was, brought in from First Energy, how householder was the recipient of it, how this money was kind of used, whether it was illegal or not. I was not party to that, and it was never brought to our attention that it could have been illegal. I mean, everybody knew, at least I think, that there was a massive amount of support from First Energy to the householder and the Republicans in the House. So that's how I never knew that this indictment was coming, or we were shocked. I think most of the people I talked to yesterday in Columbus, the Senate was in session, had no idea that this was coming.
If I wanted to add something to that, in the finance, and Sean mentioned this earlier, Senator O'Brien mentioned this earlier, finance reports, and there was talk in the sponsors of the bill, HB 6, the extraordinary contributions from First Energy to those representatives. Contributions that I personally have never seen before from one corporation to sponsor the bill. So that discussion took place, but the sheer numbers, the monthly payments from First Energy or Energy Harbor to Generation Now, those numbers were shocking to all those that witnessed the news conference yesterday.
I could just add, I think one of the fundamental things is HB 6 was just a bad bill, and we all in this room did not support that. It had many problems with it, but I think it underscores the underlying problem with Ohio is our campaign finance laws, that we're able to have 501c4s with hidden money, with that are able to have zero oversight, that they're able to use this unfettered money, this slush fund, to then go out and plan for the future to get their proponents, those people who support them, and that's what allegedly is going on with the complaint, is that Householder had planned this for a long time. He worked with certain groups, had the money to get his people into power to pass House Bill 6. I mean, that's the fundamental issue that we have to, if we don't correct, will continue. So until we have real finance campaign reform, things like this can pop up again. And I think that, the tip of the iceberg is House Bill 6, because that is the end result of what happened. The fundamental problem underneath that tip is campaign finance. That money has to be transparent, that we have to know where it goes to, who's giving it to us, and how's it being spent. And I think that is, until you have that, we're going to continue to see problems like we're seeing, and it's Ohioans who are going to continue to suffer. And until that change occurs, we're going to see that again. This will happen again.
Republican support for this kind of reform?
Well, I mean, it's early yet. We're in discussions with them. We just talked about the bill. This just broke yesterday. This is something that we will be bringing up with them. I believe, looking at it, I think they should, and hopefully they will. But it will be part of any new legislation ongoing that we do. First, we're going to repeal 6, and then we're going to look at campaign finance reform, and we're going to move forward from there. But if we don't do both, Ohio will continue to have these types of problems. Corporations and these type of dark entities will continue to influence the politics of this state.
I'm going to mention something, and I'm going to not beat around the bush. Gil Blair's opponent was going to be the recipient of Householder. He was part of Team Householder, Gil Blair's opponent. My opponent is part of Team Householder. So consequently, as Sean mentioned, Team Householder candidates were they're going to be recipients of hundreds of thousands of dollars to run their campaigns. I had $200,000 against me 4 years ago. They weren't successful, but nonetheless, that dark money exists. Gil Blair's opponent was going to be the big recipient of Team Householder funds. My opponent was going to be the recipient of Team Householder funds. Prior to this, we were going to be outspent in our campaigns. So this changes that dramatically. As well as, even though Speaker of the House is not over Senate, Sean O'Brien's opponent was going to be the recipient of an awful lot of dark money. She has $2,000 in campaign account. Explain how you spend $400,000 or $500,000 on your campaign, having $25 fundraisers.
And these were all in this year's election, this year's general?
Coming up, yes.
If you look at previous, we don't know, this is things that we're believing will happen because history tells us the future. If you look at past races, historically, that's what has happened. candidates have almost no money, and if they're funded by the right party, all of a sudden they are recipients of hundreds of thousands of dollars in the last 3 or 4 weeks or months prior to an election. Where's that money come from? Where do Is it just suddenly appear? The money I've raised have taken me 10 years to get that, and I'm not even a quarter of $500,000. I can't raise that kind of money. And that's not what politics is about. I think it's about representing the people, giving them the choice. When we have dark money, it's special interests who are now making choices. And until that changes and campaign laws change, we're going to see householders of Ohio come up more and more. And I know Chris Stanley's here. He is also running, and he was definitely going to be the recipient of householder money against him. So, any other questions or anything else that? Okay, with that, we thank you. Thanks for coming.